welcome into this week's discussion of Star Wars Aftermath, Life Debt by Chuck Wendig. If you're finding this series and you are not familiar with it, go ahead and click on the thing, and it will take you back to the beginning of our discussion of this book, where basically we've been going through chapter by chapter and discussing the bigger themes and events. And if you really want to, you can go back on this playlist and see the beginning where we went through Aftermath Prime, the first book where we kind of got started, and it would be really fun to talk with you about the book going forward. But for this week, we are discussing chapters 16, 17, and 18. I'm very excited to get into all of this. There's a lot to talk about. A lot of things are going on. Basically, these couple chapters are where the story we've been waiting for kind of comes together. So we meet the Aftermath crew, which is currently consisting of Nora, Timon, Bones, Jazz, and Singer, so it's kind of the classic set of the crew, and they are looking for a guy named Golas Aram, something like that, last name Aram. He's a prison architect who's kind of built himself a fortress on this planet, and they're basically, investigating him to try to figure out how to, get him out of this place he's in so they can question him. They don't really know why, they don't know how he's connected to Han, they just know he's connected to Han in some way. The planet they're on is really cool. The fields are surrounded in this stuff called thirst grass, which is just like grass that cuts you and drinks your blood, which is kind of terrifying, to be honest, but also kind of cool. At one point, Jazz goes to shoot the wall of this fortress, if you will. She had Timon rig up a listening bug, that she could shoot at the wall. And it's funny because they specifically call the thing that she's going to shoot a slug, and her gun a slug thrower. And I remember the first time I ever read the word slug thrower, or phrase slug thrower in Star Wars, was in Star Wars Shatterpoint, which is a Legends novel. I didn't understand at the time that bullets could be called slugs, and I didn't understand that slug thrower meant gun in space. I remember reading this book and hearing, everybody had slug throwers, and I literally thought they were guns that shot, slugs, the creature slugs. I mean, slugs could be kind of gross if they landed on you, but, why did it matter if somebody was shooting slugs at you? And then I figured it out. That's really not relevant to Aftermath at all. I just thought it was a funny thing that I did not understand when I was younger. But basically, they're there, they're bored. Bones is all kind of, in sleep mode, so he doesn't accidentally murder the whole planet as he might do. And no one really wants to be there. Nora's at the point where she's contemplating Jedi philosophy that Leia told her about, that Luke told Leia about, and all of this stuff. And then just as Jazz is about to shoot this listening bug at the building and something's actually going to happen, there's a stampede, and all these animals start running at them. And then they get away from the animals, and then they get flashbanged, and they're like, what is going on? And then it turns out, it's Han Solo! So here we are, almost halfway through the book, and Han Solo finally shows up, but we have him. We have the man himself. Chapter 17 picks up in a bar. They kind of go back. Everyone can kind of tell that Han is on edge. Nora's just kind of talking to him and eventually gets him to crack, and he tells the whole story of everything that happened, which, short version, is Han thought, he was going to be able to go liberate Kashyyyk. Turns out information was bad, and not only did he lose Chewbacca, but he got a whole bunch of smugglers and other Wookiee refugees captured too, because this whole thing was just a giant mistake. What I liked here is we heard Han kind of talk about the concept of a Wookiee life debt. If you're not familiar with the concept of a Wookiee life debt, it's the same kind of life debt in a way you hear in Phantom Menace with Jar Jar Binks. It's basically, you saved my life, and now I'm going to follow you until the end of your days and take care of you. And Han was saying that Chewie felt that he owed Han a life debt for saving him from Kessel. And then Han talks about how he never really felt like Chewie owed him anything, that if anything, Chewie's the one that saved him, that stopped him from this bad path that he was on, and that they kind of are both two characters that just really feel like they really owe the other one their lives. This particular thing I find interesting because now that we have seen Solo, obviously Solo was not out at the time of this book's release. This book was released in 2016. Chewie doesn't necessarily save Han from anything in the film, but I think what this might be referencing, how I'm kind of choosing to read it in light of having seen Solo, is at the end of Solo, Han obviously shoots Beckett and feels betrayed by everyone. Everyone he met in that movie basically is either dead or has turned on him. And I wonder if that isn't the dark path that he was kind of walking down, and Chewie is the one that stayed with him. Chewie's the one that didn't betray him, Chewie's the one that's still there, and I think that's a large part of their bond. And I think that Chewie could feel like, yeah, Han rescued him, but Han could be like, all of these people that I looked up to, all these people that I just depended on my whole life, Chewie was the one that didn't leave me. All of this is intensified by the fact that Han, as he's going over the story, says that in his mind, he bugged out of the fight, the big space fight that they were in, because he thought if he got away, it would make it easier for him to save Chewie. And then he says, you know, I think I was lying to myself. I think I was just afraid, and I abandoned Chewie. So now Han has this insane sense of guilt that he owed Chewie his life, and instead basically sentenced Chewie to a life in captivity. It's at this point, too, we learn that the connection between Han and Aram is Aram has built a prison that is on Kashyyyk, where Chewie is currently held up, and Han was doing the same thing the Aftermath crew were trying to do, which is to get this guy to come out so he could learn about this prison so he could go save Chewbacca. The conversation ends with Han telling them that they should go. Han's gonna stay out and try to find Chewbacca, and just to relay the message to Leia that he's alive, he's fine, and he will be home, quote, in time. In time, of course, meaning in time for their son to either be born or shortly thereafter. What I really like about this passage is it shows Han as being an intelligent person. So often Han gets characterized as the big doofus. Han certainly tries to play up himself being a big doofus. But, you know, Han, in telling the whole story, you know, he got all these people together to try to take Kashyyyk back, even if it didn't work. Han was patiently tracking this Aram guy to the point of chastising the Aftermath crew for not being patient enough. You know, Han Solo is being more patient than all of these other characters, and it shows that there's a lot more to Han than Han likes to let you know. At the end of the chapter, of course, Han is walking away, and lo and behold, the one character that everyone's forgotten about up until this point shows up, Mr. Bones, who last he knew was supposed to be looking for Han Solo, so he knocks Han out and yells, "I have subdued the target with violence!" I love Bones. I love everything about Bones. Bones is a riot. Then we hit Chapter 18. Chapter 18 involves a New Republic meeting with several people, including Mon Mothma and her two advisors. The two advisors she has are kind of like her angel and her devil on her shoulder. Basically, one is very much like, we need to militarize everything. We need fridges that have blasters in them. Like, everything needs military. And the other person's like, nah. And it's basically the two extremes on either side. We also have Admiral Akbar, who's involved. Who's not invited to that meeting was Princess Leia, but Princess Leia shows up anyway. It's a big awkward thing. Akbar's like, I told her she totally should have invited you. And she didn't, and Mon Mothma's like, I just, figured, you were busy and stuff. You can totally come, though. And it kind of shows you this conflict between Mon Mothma and Leia, and it's set up as Leia is the idealistic, passionate leader, and Mon Mothma is the cool, calm, and collected, overly rational leader, and how they're butting heads. So basically, Princess Leia, she's a character who has never really been involved with government outside of a connection to the rebellion. So if you've read Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray, which I highly recommend, by the way, we find out that Leia becomes aware of the rebellion against the Empire around the same time she becomes a junior senator. So even though she's always been a princess and has always been involved with stuff on her own world, she gets her ideas of galactic politics around the same time as she gets her ideas of galactic rebellion. So Leia doesn't really know much at this point on how to run a government unless she's fighting against another government. And that's not a slam on Leia, that's just the life she's led. Remember, this is only 1 year after Return of the Jedi. Mon Mothma is much older than Leia. Mon Mothma was a senator in the Old Republic. In fact, there's deleted scenes from Revenge of the Sith where Mon Mothma was a part of this delegation that was petitioning to try to get the war to end. So Mon Mothma is coming very much from the point of she doesn't want to be Palpatine because she's seen Palpatine, she's seen where Palpatine comes from, she's terrified and afraid of being him, so she's trying to demilitarize everything, she's trying to not engage, she just wants the Empire to burn itself out and to end war as fast as humanly possible. Leia has only ever really known war, so Leia's like, we need to just keep going and fight the frick out of everything. I think in this scenario, Leia is more correct. I mean, knowing what we know and knowing, having seen 2 installments of the sequel trilogy, we know the First Order rises out of the ashes of the Empire and that something needs to be done. But I think that Mon Mothma isn't entirely wrong either. I think she's making good decisions that are so laced with fear that it causes them to just not be enough, if that makes sense. Where Leia is making decisions so laced with passion that she might not be thinking clearly. I get the distinct feeling that, they would be more successful if they worked together instead of butting heads, but that's just me. I don't run galactic governments. In fact, Mon Mothma has a little bit of what I like to refer to as falling to the light side, which is a thing I discussed in my Balance of the Force series, if anyone has stumbled across that. But basically, I have this idea that the problem with the Jedi Order in the prequel trilogy is that they so were against any kind of conflict or getting involved with any kind of conflict that there was nothing they could do until war was at their doorstep and they had to become generals. Whereas if they had been kind of paying attention to the state of the galaxy and not just being so trusting that everything was okay and not turning a blind eye to so many things, that maybe a smaller conflict sooner could have avoided the Clone War. Then we go to Admiral Rax. Admiral Rax, at this point we find out that, he's kind of thinking to himself, meditating on some things, and we find out he's been pulling the strings all along. He's the one that set up the leak that there was going to be a window of opportunity to attack Kashyyyk. So if you remember in Aftermath Prime, we had the Interlude, which is the interlude where Han hears about this. All the way then, it was part of Rax's plan, and Rax has been trying to get not only Han and Chewbacca involved with Kashyyyk, but trying to get the Aftermath crew involved with Han to get to Aram. And there's all these elements going on, and we don't fully know yet what Rax's plan is, but he's very, very excited to see it come about, and he has a test for Sloane. And then we'll skip ahead briefly to the end of the chapter where Rax and Sloane interact. Rax has decided to tell Sloane more of his plan to try to get her in line because he knows that she's been investigating him. He tells her that he knows that she's been investigating him, and he tells her that everything he's doing right now is to build up to a plan he has to attack Chandrila. Chandrila being the New Republic capital. He lets Sloane think that this is a attack with ships, although it's implied that it's not really going to be an attack with ships. Basically, they're kind of back into working together, at least reluctantly, because Sloane wants to see this attack come about. The other thing that happened in the book is a really cool thing. Leia is really mad about her argument with Mon Mothma, and she goes to this meditation room she has, and she's got a plant from Endor, and she's meditating on the plant to try to get the plant to grow. She talks about how she's not been able to connect to the Force in the same way Luke does, that she can't feel and sense the life in others around her, but she tries again, and she goes into the Force, and she can actually sense the life of her child. She can actually sense that she has a son, that her child is a boy. It's this really cool moment, and then she's kind of washed over with this sudden wave of fear over what might happen to him. But it was really cool to kind of see Leia's first, intentional Force connection, and that she gets to have this through her son. But that's what I got for this week. Next week, we're going to read the Interlude on Tatooine, and then chapter 19, 20, and 21. So that'll be 4 elements total, and conveniently enough, that'll finish part 3, and we'll be on to part 4. So as you can see, the parts in this book are moving along quite quickly. So basically, pick up at the Tatooine Interlude and read until the end of the part, until we get to part 4. Please leave me a comment on what you think of the story so far, and then follow us on other things. If you're not already, please follow us at Port Haven Forums on Twitter. Visit port-haven.com for our blog site where you can see even more. We have started an Instagram that you can find us on, and we also have a Discord server, and it'd be wonderful if you would join us there. But with that, I'm going to let you all carry on with your day, and I'm excited to talk to you all next week.